Carrying on from last week's the Chullin Daf, probably the Steinsaltz edition. I want to Amud 42. Sorry, Daf 42, Amud A. The Gemara answers, let's you say that if it is so that his wife gave birth, it would have generated publicity and had been common knowledge. Therefore, one might conclude that the slaughter is valid even if he declared that the slaughter is for the sake of a burnt offering of his wife after childbirth, and in fact, she did not give birth. The counter is Rabbi Elazar teaches that the slaughter is not valid. Say that his wife miscarried and is liable to an offering, but it is not common knowledge because the baby was not born alive. Let's just finish off that chapter. So that's the end of that chapter, chapter 2. So the Steinsaltz gives a summary of the chapter. So a summary to Perek, or chapter 2. The first part of this chapter is a continuation of halakha of slaughter discussed in the previous chapter. Initially, it was explained that the basic mitzvah of slaughter is mentioned in the Torah, and its details are halakha transmitted to Moses from Sinai. There is a mitzvah to slaughter the domesticated and undomesticated animals and birds by cutting their neck. In the slaughter of an animal, both the windpipe and the gullet must be cut, and in the slaughter of a bird, it is sufficient to cut either of the simanim. As is the case with regard to many halachot, if one cuts the majority of a simon, it is as though he cut the entire simon. The primary element of slaughter is the cutting of the simanim, not the emergence of blood. But if no blood emerges, the animal is not rendered susceptible to its impurity. Other permitted creatures, e.g., fish and locusts, do not require slaughter. Slaughter is effective in rendering permitted the consumption of the flesh of the animal only if it is performed so before the soul of the animal departs, and besides time of which is defined by the sages. Likewise, the animal does not assume unslaughtered carcass status and does not become a primary source of its impurity only if the slaughter occurs before the slaughter part. On that basis, it is permitted to slaughter an animal in danger of imminent death. Nevertheless, some sages adopt a stringent practice and will not eat the flesh of an animal slaughtered when it is in danger of imminent death. Slaughter is performed by passing the knife back and forth and cutting the flesh without pressing the knife or without ripping the simanim. Nevertheless, it is possible for two people to slaughter one animal or for one person to slaughter two animals at the same time. The sages established a minimum length for the knife used to slaughter an animal ab initio. But if the slaughter was performed properly with a smaller knife, the slaughter is valid after the fact. There are 5 actions that invalidate slaughter: interrupting the slaughter, pressing the knife, concealing the knife in the course of an inverted slaughter, diverting the knife above the place of slaughter, and ripping the simanim from the place before cutting them. An animal whose slaughter was invalidated assumes unslaughtered carcass status and becomes a primary source of ritual impurity. A significant portion of this chapter addresses the matter of intent during slaughter. The conclusion is that although there is a mitzvah to slaughter, one need not have intent to perform a mitzvah. The slaughter must be performed through the action of a competent person. The slaughterer that happens spontaneously, e.g., if a knife falls and cuts the neck, is not valid. Intent to slaughter for idol worship invalidates slaughter and benefit from the animals forbidden as an idolatrous offering. The sages distinguish between actual idol worship and slaughter for the sake of mountains, valleys, and the like. Although one who slaughters with that intent invalidates the slaughter. Deriving benefit from that animal is permitted unless his intent was to slaughter for the angel of the mountain. If one slaughters an animal on behalf of a Gentile, it is permitted to eat the meat of the animal even if the Gentile's intent was that the slaughter be for idol worship. The intent of the owner is not decisive in this regard. Rather, it is the intent of the slaughterer that determines whether the slaughter is valid. Nevertheless, if one slaughters an animal belonging to another for the sake of idolatry, he does not render it forbidden, because a person cannot render forbidden an item that is not his. There are various customs with regard to slaughter relating to the prohibitions against sorcery and necromancy, or due to the general prohibition against following the customs of Gentiles. The sages prohibited any slaughter that could arouse suspicion or that has the appearance of violating a prohibition, and they permitted slaughter in cases where it is obvious that the slaughter is not emulating the Gentiles. Another type of intent that invalidates slaughter is the intent to slaughter a non-sacred animal as an offering. Although the slaughter in and of itself does not render non-sacred animals forbidden, concern exists that perhaps he had previously consecrated the animal. If so, then in slaughtering it, he might be in violation of the prohibition against slaughter of sacrificial animals outside the temple courtyard. At the very least, his actions would have the appearance of prohibition, as it appears that he is consecrating an animal and slaughtering it outside the temple courtyard. The conclusion of the Gemara is that if one slaughters for the sake of an offering that can be brought as a vow offering or as a gift offering, the slaughter is not valid. But if he slaughters the animal for the sake of an obligatory offering, the slaughter is valid. These topics and other related issues are the main focus of this chapter. There's also an especially long treatment of the impurity of food, as well as an analysis of whether it is the slaughter or the blood of slaughter that renders food susceptible to its impurity. And now we're going to go on to Perek chapter 3. So some quotations directly from the Torah here. The first one, and the Lord spoke unto Moses and to Aaron, saying unto them, speak unto the children of Israel, saying, these are the living things which may eat among all the animals that are on the earth, in Leviticus 11, 1-2. These may you eat of all that are in the waters, whatever has fins and scales in the waters, in the seas, and in the rivers, may you eat, in Leviticus 11, 9. And these you shall have in detestation among the fowls, they shall not be eaten, they are detestable thing, Leviticus 11, 13. All winged swarming things that go upon all fours are detestable thing unto you, yet these may you eat of all the winged swarming things that go upon all fours, which have jointed legs above their feet, wherewith they leap upon the earth, Leviticus 11:21. These are the animals which you may eat: the ox, the sheep, and the goat, the hart, and the gazelle, the yashmor, the akko, and the dishon, and the teo, and the zama. And that's from Deuteronomy 14:4-5. And you shall be holy men unto me, and you shall not eat any flesh that is torn of animals terefa in the field. You shall cast it to the dog. Exodus 22:30. This chapter, the longest in the tractate Chullin, deals with several subjects, all surrounding the question which animals are permitted for consumption. The opening chapters of the tractate discuss the proper manner of slaughter to render a kosher animal permitted for consumption. This chapter will explore which animals are prohibited for consumption no matter how they are slaughtered. Such animals fall into two categories: terefot, which are animals with a fatal injury or disease, and non-kosher species of animals. The Torah presents a prohibition of a terefa only briefly, leaving several ambiguities as to its content. What is the essence of this prohibition? Is a terefa prohibited because of the injury per se, or because it is certain to die? Which cases are included in the prohibition of a terefa? Which injuries and diseases are sufficiently severe to render an animal forbidden? What differences are there between birds and animals in this regard? An oral tradition received from Moses at Sinai lists various injuries in animals and birds that render them terefot, but it is unclear whether the list is exhaustive, and how it applies to various cases. Non-kosher species are called tamei in the Torah. This word is used in other contexts to denote its impurity, and both uses share a connotation of abhorrence and joining one to distance himself from the object in question. The concept of kosher and non-kosher species appear in the story of Noah's Ark in the book of Genesis, a point in the biblical narrative well before these halachot were given to the Jews at Sinai. In the book of Leviticus, the Torah presents the physical signs of kosher mammals explicitly, while with regard to birds, it presents a list of non-kosher species. The Gemara explains how to identify the kosher mammal in situations where the signs are missing or ambiguous, as well as the possible existence of additional signs identifying it as kosher or non-kosher. With regard to birds, the Gemara addresses the possibility of identifying kosher birds by means of signs when one is unfamiliar with the non-kosher species listed in the Torah. The Gemara also describes the signs of kosher fish and grasshoppers, for which slaughter is not required at all. The Torah specifies fins and scales as a sign of a kosher fish, and the Gemara explains the details of this requirement. What are considered fins and scales? What if a fish sheds its scales? With regard to grasshoppers, the Torah lists the kosher species while also giving a sign: large hind legs for jumping. The Gemara offers additional signs to aid in identifying kosher grasshoppers, as well as identifying the species listed in the verses. The discussions in this chapter provide a practical framework for determining which animals are permitted for consumption and which are forbidden. Although there are tangential discussions on this topic also in the Talmud, the main principles are explicated here. A note to our readers: the sages of the Talmud possess an in-depth understanding of the anatomy of cows, burden on the animal that is discussed in this tractate. For the reader's easy reference, detailed anatomical diagrams are shown on the facing page. So as it says on the facing page, it's a very detailed, it's basically the animal that's cut, and you can see from viewing it from the left or viewing it from the right, the animal in question here is a cow, and it labels all the parts of the cow, and the same is something that can be with a chicken. So if you have the Steinsaltz on page 225, so let's dive straight in. The Mishnah: Eile terefes b'behema nekuvas haveshet usukas hagalgeles nikav karum shemoach nikav hachele b'beis chalach lalo nishbaro hashadro b'nifsak hachut shela nital hakaved v'lo nishta'eh hemenu kulam. These are the wounds These wounds constitute terefot. For the footnote here, Eile terefot, these are the animals prohibited for consumption based on the verse, you shall not eat any flesh that is torn of the animals terefot in the field, Exodus 22:30, referring to animals injured by predators and on the verge of death. The Rambam and Sefer Kedusha, Hilchot Makom Asur 4:6-9, writes that the verse's reference to predation is simply the typical case, and the prohibition includes animals injured by other means as well. An animal is considered a terefot only if it is damaged structurally in a visible way. An animal that is dying of disease, old age, or poisoning is not considered a terefot, rather than an animal in danger which is permitted for consumption. See 37a and 58b. In an animal, rendering them prohibited for consumption, a perforated gullet. So what does it mean here by perforated gullet? An animal whose gullet was perforated is a terefot no matter how small the hole is. In accordance with the ruling of the Mishnah, if the perforation is located where the animal is ordinarily slaughtered, once dead, the animal is considered an unslaughtered carcass and with impurity, even if it was slaughtered, in accordance with Gemara on 32ab and on 43b. From the Sefer Kedusha, Hilchot Shechita 319, Shulchan Aruch 33:3. When the perforation goes through the wall of the gullet or cut windpipe, sorry. Usukas hagalgeles. If the windpipe was cut along its width in the location where the animal is ordinarily slaughtered, the animal is considered a carcass and transmits impurity, even if it is otherwise slaughtered properly, according to the Gemara in 32ab. If it was cut below this area, the animal is terefot, no matter how narrow the cut. If the animal was cut lengthwise, the animal is kosher as long as some of it remains intact at either end of the area where it's ordinarily slaughtered. The Rambam Sefer Kedusha Hilchot Shechita 319, 323, Shulchan Aruch Yodea 34:1, 34:7. If the membrane of the brain was perforated, Nikav Kom Shamoach. The brain is surrounded by two membranes. If the inner membrane, the pia mater, was perforated, the animal is terefot. If only the outer membrane, the dura mater, was perforated, the animal is kosher. Some hold that even a perforation of the outer membrane renders the animal terefot, and the custom is to be stringent where it will not lead to monetary loss. Later authorities are stringent even in case of potential monetary loss. And that's from the Rambam Sefer Kedusha Hilchot Shechita 6:3, Shulchan Aruch Yodea 31:1, and Sishach and put the teshuva there. Or if the heart is perforated in its chamber, Nikav Halev Neves Chalalo. If any of the chambers of the heart are perforated, the animal is a terefot, in accordance with the ruling of the Mishnah. If the perforation did not reach the chamber, even if the wall itself was fully perforated, e.g., if the hole extends from one side of the heart to the other, but below the level of the chambers, the animal is kosher. And that's in the Rambam Sefer Kedusha Hilchot Shechita 6:5, Shulchan Aruch Yodea 41:2. If the spinal column was broken and its cord was cut, if the liver was removed and nothing remained of it, any of these render the animal a terefot. Additionally, a lung that was perforated or that was missing a piece. What does that mean? The lungs are surrounded by two thin membranes. According to the Gemara 46b, a perforated lung refers to a case where both membranes are perforated, such that air escapes from the lungs when they are inflated. The word missing denotes the absence of one of the 5 lobes, 2 on the left and 3 on the right, that constitute the lungs. Rambam's commentary on the Mishnah Rashi here and the Gemara on 47b. When the animal terefa, Rabbi Shimon says it is not a terefa unless it is perforated through to the bronchi. If the abomasum was perforated, or gallbladder was perforated, or the small intestines were perforated, this is terefa. It is also terefa in the case where the internal rumen was perforated, or where the majority of the internal rumen was torn. Rabbi Yehuda says, for a large animal, a tear of 1 handbreadth renders it a terefa, while for a small animal, it is terefa only if the majority of it was torn. And this is terefa where the amasum hemsis, what's hemsis? Hemses. This is the 3rd chamber in the ruminant stomach, which is round and filled with large folds of mucosa. According to the Aruch, the letter Hey at the beginning of the word is a definite article, and the word is derived from the Hebrew root mem semach samach, meaning dissolve. In addition, Rabbi Eliyahu Baho notes the similarity between this Hebrew word and the Latin amasum. Interesting parallel. Or the reticulum. Ruminants digest cellulose that simple stomach animals cannot by means of pre-gastric fermentation, wherein microbes digest the cellulose, and the byproduct of that fermentation is later digested by the animal. This is accompanied by the 4th chambered stomach. When the animal swallows, the food descends through the gullet into the rumen. The rumen and the reticulum serve as large churning fermentation vats. Microbes break down the feed while continuous contractions mix the contents, sending larger particles known as cud back to the mouth for further chewing and letting smaller particles pass onto the amasum. The amasum, with its many leaves, provide a large surface area, reabsorbs fluid, salt, and some residual nutrients, and then pumps the remaining contents into the abomasum, or the true stomach, for an enzymatic digestion. From there, the process continues as it would in a simple stomached animal. From the abomasum, the food travels to the small intestine, and then to the spinal colon, the cecum, and finally the rectum. The Gemara in 54a explains that since the reticulum and the amasum open into each other, in any case, a perforation of the wall into does not render an animal terefa, as would a perforation of the outer wall. The diagram below shows part of the ruminant digestive system, which includes 1, the gullet. So this is the diagram here. Rumen, reticulum is there. Amasum, abomasum, small intestine, spinal colon, cecum, and rectum. Likewise, if an animal fell from the roof, this includes any fall from a height greater than 10 handbreadth. In such a case, even if it is not immediately apparent that the animal has sustained an injury, one must be concerned that its internal organs might have been damaged. Or if the majority of its ribs were fractured, or if it was clawed by a wolf. The Rushas Hazav. This is the only terefa on this list mentioned explicitly in the Torah. You shall not eat any flesh that is torn of animals in the field. Exodus 22:30. When a predator sinks its claws into an animal's flesh, it may cause an internal perforation that could endanger the animal's life. Question 53b. Therefore, if the location of the claw is known, one may check the flesh underneath for signs of injury. If the location is unknown, to an entire body cavity for perforations, it is a terefa. Rabbi Yehuda says, if it was clawed by a wolf, in the case of a small animal, i.e. a sheep or goat, or clawed by a lion in the case of a large animal, i.e. cattle, was clawed by a hawk. Nates is a hawk. The Mishnah refers to hawks from the genus Acipeta, known commonly as goshawks or sparrowhawks. These birds have a body length averaging approximately 40 centimeters and a wingspan of approximately 80 centimeters. They prey on rodents and other birds, catching them in mid-flight. These hawks are known for their excellent eyesight, which is 8 times keener than that of humans and allows them to see objects 1 centimeter long from a distance of 80 meters. Wow. The genus includes some 47 species, of which 5 are currently empty as well. In the case of a small bird, if a hawk claws a small bird, such as a dove or pigeon, the bird is a turefa, even if the hawk is smaller than the attacked bird. If the claws of a large bird, such as a chicken, the bird is not a turefa. According to Rashba, if the attacked large bird is smaller than the hawk, it is rendered a turefa. If a large bird of prey claws any bird, even a large one, it renders a turefa in accordance with the Mishnah and the Gemara 52b. When this issue is discussed in greater depth. That's in the Rambam Sefer Kedusha, Hilchah Shechita 5.5, Shulchan Aruch Yodeh, and 7.3. Or if it's caught by a large bird of prey, in the case of a large bird, then this is turefa. This is the principle. Any animal that was injured such that an animal in a similar condition could not live, the Torah prohibits the consumption of any animal on the verge of death due to injury or an anatomical defect, even if it was slaughtered before it died. This prohibition includes only those cases enumerated by the sages, and therefore an animal on the verge of death due to an injury or defect that is not among those listed by the sages is not considered turefa. An animal with one of the injuries enumerated in the Mishnah is considered turefa, even if it is not healed. From the Sefer Kedusha Hilchet Makot Asuot 479, Hilchah Shechita 9:12. 13, Shulchan Yodeh, 7:18. And the other footnote here about that. The Gemara records a dispute between the Tanaim with regard to whether every turefa is destined to die from its injury. According to Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, even if the turefa does not die within a determinate period of time, it held deteriorates continuously. According to Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, a turefa dies within 30 days. The majority opinion is that the turefa died within 12 months of his injury, and that is the halacha. See 57b and Rashi in Tosfot there. Nevertheless, this halacha does not apply to case of turefa listed in the Mishnah or the Gemara. Those animals are still considered turefa, even if they could survive for longer than 12 months. The 12-month period is relevant only to cases of animals about which there is uncertainty as to their status as a turefa. If the animal survives for 12 months, the uncertainty is resolved, and it is not a turefa. Among them, Kedusha Shechita 11.1 for an extended period is a turefa, the consumption of which is forbidden by Torah. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish says, where is there an allusion in the Torah to the prohibition of a turefa? The Gemara interjects, where is there an allusion? Doesn't the Torah state explicitly, you should not eat any flesh that is torn of animals, turefa in the field, Exodus 22:30. Well, the question is, where is an allusion to the principle that a turefa cannot live? As Mrs. teaches in the last clause, this is the principle. Any animal that was injured such that an animal in a similar condition could not live for an extended period is a turefa. We learn by inference that the turefa cannot live. If so, from what do we do? From where do we derive this? So the footnote here, turefa cannot live. Turefa in a chaya. The opinion that holds that a turefa cannot survive for more than a limited period does not always appear to be consistent with modern scientific knowledge. For example, the Gemara on 52b ruled that an animal clawed by certain types of animals, such as cats, is considered turefa due to the venom found in the claws of the cat, a phenomenon not known to modern scientists or biologists. In addition, the Gemara on 46a concludes that an animal with at least 2 olive bolts of the liver can continue to survive and is not considered a turefa. In the response of the Ravash in 447, though it is noted that such an animal cannot in fact survive, modern experiments indicate that an animal can survive only if it has at least 1/4 of its liver. Another example is the case of an animal with a piece of its skull the size of a cellar coin removed, which the Gemara 54b renders the animal a turefa, even though birds often do not live more than this amount of their skull removed, a phenomenon already documented by the Semach Tzedek. Different explanation we present to address this problem. According to the Rambam, the cat of turefa were given to Moses at Sinai, and despite the Gemara's statement that a turefa cannot live, an animal's status as a turefa is not determined by its lifespan. It is only in cases where there is uncertainty as with regard to whether a type of damage renders the animal terefa, that its ability to live out the year is taken into consideration. By Moshe Feinstein, it was Moshe Yodei 356 explains that since the categories were given to Moses as a tradition, changes in science did not change the determination of Lach in this regard. According to the Rashban, response of the Rashban 198 and the Rashban 447, the sage could not have been wrong, and if according to science animals that a terefa can survive, science must be mistaken. Some later commentaries suggest that at the time of the sages, animals classified as terefa could not in fact survive for more than a limited time. Although this reality may later have changed, halacha generally to account the reality during the years 2000 to 4000 just kind of counted from creation. This period is referred to as the era of the Torah. And the creation and determination of halachic principles occurred exclusively at that time. Even if the halachic into reality changes after the halacha, nevertheless does not change. Some suggest that cases where terefa survives must be rare, and as exceptions to the rule, such cases can be disregarded. And that's Meiri Yamsher Shlomo 80. Interesting. It is derived from a verse, as it is written, "These are the living things which you may eat among all the animals that are on the earth." Leviticus 1:11-2. The verse indicates you may eat a living animal, i.e., that one can survive, but you may not eat an animal that is not living, i.e., one that cannot survive. One lived by food that the terefa cannot live. The Gemara asks, and according to the one who says that the terefa can live, this is the opinion expressed in the chapter 57b, that some terefa can survive 2 or 3 years. Rashi, early commentaries question how the sages could have disagreed on an issue that could be tested empirically. The Ramban suggests that although empirical tests show that no animal in such a condition survived more than 12 months, the sages held that this is not contradict conclusive proof, contradict received traditions, and that in theory, in some conditions, such an animal could survive. According to Tosfos and the Rashba, even according to those who hold that a terefa can live, the condition of such an animal will deteriorate. The sages disagree as to the feasibility of predicting an upper limit of its lifespan. Where does he derive this? The Gemara response. He derived it from the same verse. These are the living things which you may eat among the animals. These indicate that you may eat only these living things, but you may not eat other living things, i.e. terefa. One learns by inference that a terefa can live. The Gemara asks, and according to the other opinion that a terefa cannot live, what does he do with the word these? The Gemara responds, he requires it for that which the school of Rabbi Shmuel taught. As the school of Rabbi Shmuel taught that the verse, these are the living things which you may eat, teach that the Holy and Blessed Be sees each of every species of animal and showed it to Moses. And he said to him, these you may eat, and these you may not eat. The Gemara objects. But the other opinion also requires the word these for that which the school of Rabbi Shmuel taught. The Gemara replies, yes, indeed so. Rather, from where does he derive the principle that the terefa can live? He derived it from the other Braita that the school of Rabbi Shmuel taught. As the school of Rabbi Shmuel taught, the verse states to make a difference between the living thing that may be eaten and the living thing that may not be eaten. In Leviticus 11:47, these living things may be eaten are the 18 terefa that were stated to Moses at Sinai and enumerated in the Mishnah. The verse then makes reference to a terefa as a living thing. The Gemara questions the Braita. And are there no more cases of terefa, but are there more cases cited in the Mishnah and other Braitos for which a monomic is given, based on Gimel Reish? And are there 7 additional halachot, i.e. cases of terefa told by Amoraim? Because the Talmud was studied orally for many generations, mnemonic devices were sometimes necessary to remember a series of statements in the order in which they were taught. The Gemara used a mnemonic to commit a list of cases to memory. Granted, with regard to the Tana of our Mishnah, one can say that the cases of terefa that he taught explicitly in the Mishnah he taught, and that any case that he admitted coming under the general statement beginning, this is the principle. With regard to the Tana of the school of Rabbi Shmuel, who said, 18 terefa, one must ask, are there no more cases of terefa, but are there the 4 cases represented by Namak Beis Samach Gimel Reish? the first of which is taught in the Mishnah in 76a. An animal's hind leg was severed. The if the hind leg of an animal was severed above the leg joint, the animal is a terefa. If it was severed below the leg joint, the animal is kosher. The reference to the leg joint here refers to the upper joint or stifle. That joins the femur and the tibia. Some hold that it refers to the lower joint or hock, which joins the tibia and the tarsal bone, and the custom of Ashkenazic communities is to rule stringently. Sephardic authorities were lenient in cases of uncertainty or potential monetary loss. Rambam, and so the Rambam Sefer Kedusha Hilcha Shechita 8:11, Shulchan Aruch Yodei 55:1, and Kaf HaChaim there. And above is a terefa. The Gemara responds: the Tanya of the school of Rabbi Yishmael holds in according to the opinion of Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, who says the severed can be cauterized and the animal will live. What does this mean? The use of a hot knife for amputations had been commonplace for millennia. The burning of the blood vessels seals them shut and stems the bleeding, and the heat disinfects the blade and the wound. In fact, a similar, albeit more sophisticated method is also employed today. Therefore, such a wound does not render the animal a terefa. The Gemara objects, but even if one holds that the severed leg can be cauterized and the animal will live, this does not mean that the animal is not terefa. According to whom is the question, but aren't the cases of Beit Samach Gimel Reish stated? It is stated according to the Tana of the school of Rabbi Shmuel, who hold that there are only 18 terephot, but the Tana of the school of Rabbi Shmuel maintains that the terefa can live. If so, the fact that the animal can live if the stump of its severed limb is cauterized is immaterial as to whether it is a terefa. Rather, say that the Tana holds the contrary opinion of Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar insofar as he says that the animal with a severed leg is kosher. Yet he disagreed with the claim that the reason is because the animal can survive. So it's a reason. The Gemara objects. But isn't there the case of a deficiency in the spine? As we learned in the Mishnah of Halak 2:3, how much is considered deficiency in the spine of a corpse so that it will not be considered a formal corpse to impart impurity in a tent? Beis Shammai say 2 missing vertebrae, and Beis Hillel say 1 vertebra. Chuya achas. A complete spine of a corpse transmits its impurity to that which touches it, carries it, or it's under the same roof, just as a full corpse does. If it is missing even 1 vertebra, it is considered a mere bone, which, if its volume is less than a quarter cap, transmits its impurity only to contact or carrying, but not to that which is under the same roof, in accordance with the opinion of Beis Hillel. Rambam Sefer Tahor Hilchot Mate 2:8, and Rabbi Yehuda says that Shmuel says, just as Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel disagree with regard to rich impurities, so too they disagree with regard to a terefa. If one vertebra is disconnected from the animal's spine, is a terefa, and according to the opinion of Shmuel, the Shechita 10:2, 3:4, according to Beis Hillel, an animal missing only 1 vertebra is a terefa. This is not included in the count of Rabbi Shmuel. The Gemara responds: the amasam or the reticulum that will perforate on the outer walls, which you count as 2 separate cases, should be counted as 1 case. Accordingly, 1 case has been removed from the count of 18 terephot, and 1 case has been inserted, i.e., the case of a deficiency in the spine, and there are still only 18 cases. The Gemara asks, but isn't there the case of a terephot mentioned in the Mishnah on 54a of an animal whose hide was removed? Whose hide was removed. An animal whose hide was either removed or shed due to illness is a terefa, and according to the opinion of the rabbis, Rambam Sefer Kedusha Hilchot Shechita 9:7, Shulchan Aruch Yodei 59:1. The Gemara responds: the Tana of the school of Rabbi Shmuel holds in according to the opinion of Rabbi Meir, who deemed such an animal kosher. The Gemara asks, but isn't there also the case of an animal that the terefa has been because of a shriveled lung? Charusa. If an animal's lung shriveled due to shock caused by an act of God, such as thunder, lightning, or wild animals, it is kosher in accordance with the opinion of the Rambam 55b. If the trauma resulted from a human action, e.g., if the animal witnessed another animal be slaughtered, it is terefa. I'm going to say for Kedusha Chashchita 8:9, Shulchan Aruch Yodei 36:14. The Gemara responds, the Mishnah states that a perforated gallbladder renders the animal a terefa, but who teaches this? Rabbi Yossi, son of Rabbi Yehuda, teaches this. Therefore, the Tana removed the gallbladder from the list, since it is only the opinion of an individual, and inserted a shriveled lung. The Gemara asks, but aren't there the 7 additional halachot, i.e. case of terefa, tovai, and hamayim? The Gemara enumerates the 7 halachot. As Rav Matana says, this head of the firm Hydruka the Atma, if the head of a firma of an animal is dislocated from the acetabulum of the pelvis and the seams connecting them, the animal is a terefa. If the seams remain attached, the animal is kosher, according to the opinion of Rav Matana. A. In the Gemara's explanation there, Rambam Sefer Kedusha Chachachita 10.3, and see right there. Your day 55.2, and then the comment of the Ramah. That was completely dislocated, renders the animal terefa. And Rakesh Bar Papa says, in the name of Rav, if the animal is diseased even in one kidney, if even one of the kidneys undergoes necrosis, such that its flesh decomposes and weaks and disintegrates upon touch, and the affliction reaches the white renal pelvis inside the kidney, the animal is a terefa. On the opinion Rashish Papa states 1955a, and one explanation of Rambam Sefer Kedusha Chachachita 8.26 Yodaya 44.2 is a terefa. And we learn in the Mishnah 55a that if the spleen was removed, Nita Hakhol, if the spleen was removed, the animal is kosher. If it was perforated at its thin end, the animal is kosher. If it was perforated at its thick end, the animal is terefa. If the perforation was incomplete and the flesh remaining in the indentation was the thickness of a dinar, the animal is kosher, according to the Mishnah 54a and the opinion of Rav Aviyah from the Sefer Kedusha Chachachita 619 Yodaya 43.2. The animal is kosher. When they go into this Mishnah, Rav Aviyah says in the name of Rabba, they taught this only when the spleen was removed, but if it was perforated, the animal is a terefa. The Gemara continues. The rabbi and Rabbi Bar Hana, who's Rabbi Bar Hana, a bit of a background here in the personalities. Footnote: Rabbi Bar Hana was a 3rd generation Amor in Babylonia. Some believe him to be the son of Rabbi Bar Hana of Rav generation. At some point, he moved to Eretz Yisrael and studied under Rabbi Yochanan and the other sages there. After a time, he returned to Babylonia, bringing with him much of the Torah he had learned in Eretz Yisrael. Consequently, the Gemara records him as being in dialogue with Babylonian and Amoraim such as Rav Yehuda and Rav Hista, and the misstatement to Rav Yosef and Rav Naaman. Rabbi Bar Hana is known for recounting astonishing stories and writing descriptions of Eretz Yisrael, memories from his travels and visions. See Baba Batra 73a. Rabbi Bar Hana had several sons, among them Rav Yitzchak, who was also a great Torah scholar. Says that Shmuel says, if 2 organs must be severed in which the slaughter Simonim, i.e. the windpipe and the gullet, were mostly detached, Simonim Shenedal Ruban. Some understand this to mean that the Simonim are disconnected from the neck around the area of the throat. Rashi will explain the Simonim are disconnected from each other along the length of the Hanana. If the gullet were detached from one another along the majority of the length, the animal is terefa, in accordance with the Gemara 44a and the opinion of Rabbi Bar Hana. And that's from the Rambam Sefer Kedusha Chachachita 9.21 Yodaya 24.16. The animal is terefa. And Rav Shir says that Rav Matana says that Shmuel says if a rib was torn out from its root, if a large rib was torn out from its root along with half of the vertebra, the animal is a terefa, and according to the opinion of Shmuel. Later, commentaries hold that this rule applies even to smaller ribs which have no marrow. One would say for Kedusha, Chachachita 10.2, or Yodaya 54.2-3 in the Shach, and the taps there. Along with half of the detached vertebrae, the animal is a terefa, and the skull that was mostly crushed. The other commentators offer various explanations as to the exact nature of this injury. We actually understand that the skull received blows over most of its surface. According to the Rambam, most of the skull is fractured. other early commentaries offer variation on this theme. What common to all of them is that there is no large hole in the skull, the membrane, or in the membrane surrounding the brain. Such cases will conjure injury that in their own right render an animal terefa. If the majority skull is crushed, measured either by height or circumference, the animal is terefa, even if the membrane surrounding the brain are intact and the quantity of Shmuel. That's from the Rambam Sefer Kedusha Chachachita 10:9, Shulchan Aruch 31. Even if the membranes are intact, then the animal terefa. The majority of the flesh that envelops the majority of the rumen was torn, the animal is terefa. Basha hachofa esrov hakores berubo. The rumen is the first and largest of the four chambers of the ruminant stomach. It fills virtually the entire left side of the abdomen. Its front is protected by the ribs, but most of it is encased by the musculature of the abdominal wall. If most of that muscle is torn, the animal is terefa according to Shmuel. Rashi notes that according to one opinion later in the chapter in 50b, this flesh is identical to the external rumen mentioned in the Mishnah. See Shmuel. Since Shmuel seems to consider this a separate halacha, one must conclude that he disagrees with that opinion. If the flesh enveloping the rumen and the muscle of the abdominal wall that will expose the rumen when ripped is torn to most of its width, the animal is in accordance with the opinion of Shmuel. Sefer Kedusha Chachachita 9:5, Shulchan Aruch 48:3. The Gemara responds, there are 8 cases of perforated organs. Since the perforation of the rectum and that of the omasum are already considered one case, the case of perforated gallbladder has been excluded because it is the opinion of an individual and not that of the majority of the Moshe. 8 cases of perforated organs remain: the windpipe, membrane of the brain, heart, lungs, abomasum, intestines, internal rumen, and rectum. The mission that with an animal terefa. The Tana, the school of Rabbi Shmuel, counts them all as one case. Accordingly, he removed 7 cases from the count of 18 and asserted these 7 halachot. The Gemara challenges. If so, since there is also 2 cases of organs in the Mishnah, the spinal cord and the windpipe, then the Tana count them as one. The count of terefa then falls 1 short of 18. And furthermore, if all the cases of perforated organs are counted as one, then one cannot insert the case taught by Rav Avira in the name of Rava, that a perforated spleen, since it is also a case of perforated organ, instead of count fall short of 18. That's the end of the Omid. Thank you for listening, and see you again. Take care.